Chapter 245 Halal Rape vs Haram Rape, Part 5. Mr. Osman Al-Taib had delayed his trip to Athens for a week due to his lips sickness. His doctor had strictly warned him to refrain from talking. He is told to observe 10 days fasting from speaking. Moreover, he is forbidden from eating any food which required chewing. He had to live in liquids and other kinds of food which didn't require the use of his lips and tongue. Since he is not a good eater, the food restriction didn't bother him as much as the talking. For he is a man of a big mouth and always liked to talk and order people. 3 days had passed already since he began to observe the fast. On the 4th day he called his servant Harun and asked him to come and help him in his day-to-day activities. When Harun came, he had a difficult time with him. Whenever he wanted to say something to him, he used his hands. Many times Harun misunderstood his master and did the opposite. Such repeated misunderstandings irritated the old man and made him mad with his servant. Many times, he lost his control and slapped or kicked his servant. When the beating became too much for Harun, he came out with a bright idea of communication. He brought 2 notebooks and 2 pens. He gave his angry master 1 notebook and 1 pen and kept the other 2 with him. In his notebook he wrote the following short message. Dear Sir, I have a good idea for you. From now onwards, if you want to say anything to me, write it down in your notebook and give it to me. I will read it and do the needful. Likewise, if I want to say something to you, I will follow the same method of communication. When the old man read the written message, his face showed a gesture which is understood by Harun as approval of the bright idea. From that time onwards a better communication is established between the 2 men. Many written messages are passed from one mind to the other. In some rare cases, signal communication is used too. Such cases are in which the shameless old man wanted to abuse the half-dead body of the innocent girl Firdaus. He will point his hand, and the servant will go under the bed. So, on the 5th day, while the old man and his servant are sitting silently and facing each other, the phone began to ring. The old man pointed his hand towards the phone. The servant stood up and went and picked up the receiver. Hello. Yes, Mr. Osman Al-Taib is present. Do you wish to talk to him personally? May I know your message? It is private and confidential. When the old man heard the last 2 words, he stood up and ran towards the receiver and snatched it from his servant. He put it on his mouth and tried to talk. He experienced severe pain caused by his attempt to break the fast. He slapped his servant because he didn't remind him of his fast. The servant took the receiver again and said, Hello. Are you still on the line? Please hold on, sir. Mr. Osman Al-Taib wants to speak to you. Harun stretched his hand with the receiver towards the angry man. The old man became furious and hence slapped and kicked his foolish servant. Harun's mind became more confused and hence picked up the receiver and said, Hello. Yes, he is here, but he is not in a position to talk to you. He is suffering from lips bite. That is none of your business. Please don't ask so many questions. Just speak your message, and I will write it to Mr. Osman Al-Taib. He can read, but can't speak. He will write his reply and I will read it to you. No other way. Yes, that is the only possible way to communicate your message to him. Not tomorrow. Not even for a week. If it is so urgent, tell it now. If he won't like it, keep it to yourself. Before Harun can disconnect the line, the old man wrote quickly a message in his notebook and showed it to him. The servant took the notebook and read it loudly on the phone. At least ask him to tell you what is his name. The old man became furious again and slapped and kicked his foolish servant. He took the notebook from him and cancelled the old message and wrote a new one. The servant took the book and read it as it is. Please, sir, tell me what is your name? He looked at the old man and said loudly, I am the police inspector Hussein. The old man became worried when he heard the name. He took his notebook and wrote a message and handed it over to his servant. "I am Mr. Osman Al-Taib," read the servant loudly. "Please don't hesitate to reveal your private and confidential message to me. I am telling lies. Why should I lie to you? You will cut my tongue? I will cut your neck. So what if you are a police inspector?" The old man became outraged and hence snatched the receiver from Harun's hand and disconnected the line. He wrote the following message on his notebook: "You are a very foolish person. You are good for nothing. You are like a woman, a body without brain. How can you dare to insult my friend, Police Inspector Hussein? He is the most honorable police inspector in Al-Gadarif city. He can send you behind bars forever." When Harun read the above message, he also took his notebook and is about to write his reply, but stopped when he heard the phone ringing again. The old man pointed him to the phone. The servant took the receiver and began to speak. "Hello. Inspector Hussein again? I am sorry, sir. He is the most foolish person I have ever come across. He is good for nothing. He is like a woman, a body without brain." "What do you mean, sir? When did I tell you that Mr. Osman Al-Taib is like a woman? You are like a woman, a body without a brain." The old man snatched the receiver and disconnected the line again. He is fed up with his stupid servant. He wrote an urgent message in his notebook and showed it to his foolish servant. In accordance, Harun went out and came after few minutes, followed by the nurse Zakia. The old man wrote on his communication book a message and handed it over to the nurse. "I want you to act as my private secretary," read Zakia silently. "A very important friend of mine has called twice, but the foolish man Harun has failed to receive his message. Instead of that, he insulted my friend Inspector Hussein. So if he calls again, take the receiver and politely ask him to tell his message. Tell him my boss is sitting with me, but he can't talk because of his lip sickness. However, he can communicate his message through writing." Zakia smiled and said she will follow the instructions. The servant still wanted to be of use. He gave his writing notebook to Zakia. "What am I supposed to do with this writing notebook?" asked Zakia. "If you want to say something to Mr. Osman Al-Taib, write it down and give it to him to read," said Harun. "But he is not deaf and dumb. He can't speak, but he can hear." Before the servant can force his foolish idea on the nurse, the phone began to ring. Miss Zakia went and took the receiver and began to talk. "Hello, sir. Yes, this Mr. Osman Al-Taib's room. I am his private secretary Zakia." "Yes, sir, he is present. I was out when you called." "Never mind him. He is a very silly man." "Yes, you are right. He always puts us in trouble. My boss has corrected him sharply. He had been bitten by bees. The doctor had strictly warned him from talking for 2 weeks. Yes, we are alone. Feel free to tell your private and confidential message." "Wait a minute, until I tell him that." She put her hand on the receiver and said, "He said your brother-in-law had put you and him in a real trouble." The old man wrote a quick message and handed it to the nurse. "What has he done?" said the nurse. She began to repeat loudly what she heard. "The good citizen who exposed the rape and kidnap crime, had come to my office and said he knew the hiding place of Al-Sahir. I told him that I won't accept his information until he proved to me that he is the good citizen." When the nurse repeated the above piece of information, the old man came close to her and touched her shoulder. "Hold on, sir. Mr. Osman wants to say something." The old man wrote his mind on a paper and gave it to the nurse. "Why don't you catch him and fix him with Al-Sahir's crime and hence turn him from a good citizen into a bad citizen?" "That can't be done now," repeated the nurse, "for Omar had already betrayed us. The good citizen had forced him to write a full confession of his involvement in the rape crime and the bribe that cleared him. "Hold on, sir, Mr. Osman Al-Taib has collapsed." Zakia threw the receiver and ran towards the old man. Harun had reached him at the right time and protected him from falling on his neck. The old man had not fully lost his consciousness. He is only shaking and trembling in fear. The nurse treated him quickly and hence he stood up again. With shaking hands he wrote a quick message and passed it to the nurse. "Has Omar been forced by the police or the good citizen to betray us? And who is the police inspector that arrested him?" Zakia repeated the words of Inspector Hussein loudly to the frightened old man. "Please sir, be patient and a man of courage. Otherwise you might receive a heart attack and die while we are in great need for you. There is no police inspector involved so far except me. Things still under control and Omar has not been arrested." Those words made the old man relax and sit on a chair. He waved his hand to the nurse to continue the communication. "As I have said, the good citizen had compelled Omar to write 2 confession papers and sign them. In the first paper, he confessed his involvement in the kidnap and rape of the innocent girl. In the second paper, he stated that his brother-in-law had bribed Inspector Hussein and hence his name is blotted out of the charge sheet." The old man came quickly and touched the nurse on her shoulder. "Hold on, sir, Mr. Osman Al-Taib wants to speak some words." The old man became thoughtful for some time and wrote down his thoughts. "You have said Omar had mentioned that his brother-in-law had bribed Inspector Hussein. Am I the only brother-in-law he has? How can the police prove it is me and not Hassan Mahjoub al-Halali?" Inspector Hussein seemed to have responded in anger to the old man's reasoning, for the nurse had risen her voice 10 times louder. "You are a selfish man. You care about yourself only. Whether you like it or not, your full name has been written in the confession paper. And I will not go to jail alone, except you and your criminal brother-in-law shall go with me." The nurse ceased to shout and looked expectantly for the old man's reply to the harsh words of the angry police inspector. The old man took his notebook and wrote down his apology. He read it silently and felt satisfied with it. The nurse also read it carefully before she faxed it over to the angry police inspector. "I am deeply sorry, sir. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings or back out. I assure you that I will be with you whether inside or outside the jail. I know I am the one who put you in this critical situation. I will stand by your side and fight our way out of this problem. I am also prepared to give all my wealth to protect ourselves from this wicked conspiracy." The apology seemed to be accepted by the angry police inspector, for Zakia had reduced her voice 10 degrees less. "Please sir, don't draw me mad with you. Your brother-in-law has already spoiled my day. The good citizen wants some money to keep his mouth shut. He has demanded £10 million and Omar's sister. So you pay the ransom money, and Omar will hand over his sister, and the problem will be over." The old man wrote down a quick thought and handed it to the nurse. "What can he do if we refuse to satisfy his demands?" "You are asking a very silly question. Of course he will go to the police authority and send us behind bars. And you will never come out alive due to the advance in your age." The old man wrote a quick question and gave it to Zakia. "What am I supposed to do?" "You're asking again a silly question. You must come as soon as possible to purchase our freedom from the blackmailer." Some doubts entered the old man's mind and he jotted them down and showed it to the nurse. "I don't think this blackmailer is the same good citizen that directed you to the crime. I have a doubt that Omar and his evil leader had played some tricks to rob my money." "Will you still hold your doubts, if I tell you that Al-Wayash and another gangster by the name of Shakhosh are arrested by me yesterday?" Another bright idea flashed in the old man's mind which made him smile. He wrote it down and gave it to the nurse. "Sir, I have a good suggestion for you. Why don't you fix Shakhosh with Omar's charge and let the good citizen eat the confession papers?" "Listen, Mr. Osman Al-Taib, I am a police inspector and hence I know the weight of confession papers before the law. That idea of yours I have already done, but if you don't pay the ransom money it is going to fail. The old man wrote his reply and gave it to the nurse. In that case I will issue a check in your name because I don't trust Omar. I will send it to you tomorrow. You can cash it and settle the deal with the blackmailer. I can't come because of my lip condition. Beside that, I began to enjoy my honeymoon. Listen sir, I am not in this matter alone. You know Omar can't move a leg. I can't use my men in such problems. The good citizen told Omar he won't come himself, but will send his friends to collect the money. Suppose if they turn out to be smart guys and take the money without giving the papers, how can I handle such a situation? I want you to supply the cash and provide some men. Some doubts arose in the old man's mind and he put it in writing. Have you inquired from the so-called good citizen, how did he find the hiding place of Omar? He said he had seen him at the Sharia court. The phrase Sharia court brought the old man on his feet. He ran towards the phone and snatched the receiver from the nurse and put it on his mouth. He made a second attempt to break the fast. A sudden severe pain like an electric shock struck his mouth and spread all over his body. From the top of his head to the sole of his feet, the pain swept like a burning coal. He collapsed on the spot. The nurse and Harun ran to his rescue. The foolish servant reached first and put his rough hands on the old man's lips, thinking that will help him. The old man in response showered him with many slaps and blows. The nurse, who is better than the silly servant, began to fan the old man's mouth with her handkerchief. When she saw the receiver is swinging, she took it and said, "Are you still on the line, sir? Hold on please, Mr. Osman Al-Taib has collapsed again." She returned to the old man and continued to fan his burning lips. The old man brought his hands around her waist and embraced her. She didn't bother whether he did that out of fatherly affection or lust, but she submitted her body to him until his pain subsided. She helped him to stand on his feet again. Zakia took the receiver and waited for the old man to explain the reason of his sudden collapse. With fear and trembling the old man wrote a question and gave it to Zakia to fax it. Does the good citizen have the name of Osman or Sami or Salah or Intisar or Frida? None of these, especially the last two. He is a man and having a man name. His name is Walid Hamza? The old man isn't convinced with the inspector's answer and hence wrote another question. Why did he come to the Sharia court? That is none of my business. When you meet him personally you can ask him that question. The old man is still in his doubts. He put across another question. Can you describe him to me? He is neither tall nor short. Handsome, but not that much. He has a serious face and brown eyes. With a mustache and without a beard. Black skin and curly hair. The old man is still trying to clear his doubts. He wrote another question. The descriptions do not suit any of those four vagabonds. But still, I have my doubts. How did that man come to know the hiding place of my brother-in-law Omar? He either followed him after the trial or someone had directed him to his house. The old man didn't ask a question this time, but made a guess. He wrote it down and gave it to the nurse. If the good citizen is one of those loafers, he won't be interested in money. He will use the papers to force me to divorce my wife Firdaus. Can you make yourself clear? The old man remembered that Inspector Hussein is not aware of his quarrel with Sami and his friends. He explained the problem in few words and gave it to the nurse. To make a long story short, one of those vagabonds is in love with my wife Firdaus. They might try to pressurize me to release her to him. In that case, what are you going to do? Are you going to keep the man's girlfriend and send us to jail? The old man is very much annoyed and hence expressed his anger in the following words. What do you mean, sir? Do you think I am like Al-Wayash who kidnapped and raped the innocent girl? I am not only ready to go to jail, but I will rather prefer to die than allow another man to touch my wife. The police inspector is forced to withdraw his suggestion. The nurse repeated politely his apology. I am extremely sorry, sir. I didn't mean to hurt your feelings or interfere in your private life. But can you tell me how are we going to escape from such a trap? The old man wrote, hold on. The nurse read it to the police inspector and waited for further instructions. Then the old geezer put his hands on his back and began to walk to and fro in the room. Most probably he is trying to plan some mischief. Suddenly he stopped and wrote down what he thought will be a proper solution. The nurse first read it to herself, but didn't like it. She looked at him doubtfully. The old man pointed his finger to the phone indicating that she must fax it over whether she liked it or not. We must kidnap my wife's sister Intisar and threaten those vagabonds to surrender the papers within 24 hours, or otherwise we will rape her. Sir, I think you have a criminal mentality like your brother-in-law. As for me, I rather prefer to spend the rest of my life in jail than take part in a kidnap and rape crime. Besides that, how can you think of such a wicked conspiracy against your wife's sister? The old man found himself in a fixed situation, nevertheless he still hanged on to his wicked plan. What I meant is just threaten, but not real kidnap and rape. How can we rape somebody's wife? Do what you like to do, but don't include me in it. I will rather prefer to face the law with a bribe, than with a rape. The old man hurriedly wrote his concluding words before the inspector will oppose his plan. Your request is granted. Will you please inform Omar to call to his house Mu'allana Sheikh Marzouk and Haj Mohammed and Mr. Mahjoub al-Halali for an emergency meeting at 8 p.m. sharp, tomorrow evening. I will arrive at Al-Gadarif Airport at 6 p.m. The nurse waited for any comment from the police inspector, but the line disconnected.